If you guys don't know, we have been in a study through the book of James, and James is, we kind of talked about it earlier, is a topical, very topical book. It starts, kind of all over the place and kind of jumps from topic to topic. Some people will even call it the Proverbs of the New Testament, partially because he continues to have these kind of wise sayings and statements as he goes through, jumping from topic to topic. But as we've been able to go through it, we've been seeing some of these through lines, how each topic tends to connect to each other, and they really align all with what James is trying to teach, and specifically that the main problems that James is addressing are problems that the early church struggled with, but they're the same sort of problems that we struggled with, because they're all centered around trying to become more Christ-like in a world that doesn't endorse those sorts of things, a world that doesn't necessarily encourage us to be more Christ-like. That was the world they were living in, and it's the same world that we're living in. So just kind of a quick recap. In week 1, we looked at James 1 through 18. We talked about trials and temptation. James reminds us that trials are not pointless, that God uses them to grow steadfastness in us. In week 2, we looked at James 19 through 27. We talked about hearing and doing the word, not just hearing it, but actually doing it. We were talking about feeling encouraged, but then walking away unchanged, and how true spiritual growth is connected to action. In week 3, we looked at James chapter 2, verses 1 through 13, and we talked about the sin of partiality and not showing partiality to one group over another. And then in week 4, 2 weeks ago, we looked at James chapter 2, verses 14 through 26. We talked about faith without works being dead, that the mark of a true Christian is someone that has actions and deeds connected to their faith, that it's not faith that deeds don't save us. There's no action that actually is saving us, but rather that the actions of our life are a result of a changed heart. And so really, when we look at those 4 weeks, the first 4 weeks have been asking us kind of a simple question. And that's, is our faith just something we say, or something we believe, or is it actually shaping how we live? And so tonight, as we move into week 5, James is going to keep pressing the same idea into every other practical area of our life, and this specific practical area of our life is taming the tongue. So we're going to be in James chapter 3, if you'd like to turn to it, and we're going to talk about something very pertinent to many of us and in our lives, which is taming the tongue. So if you are turning to James chapter 3, you can turn there now. I'm going to jump up. If you don't want to turn there, you got time. I'm going to have all the verses on the screen too. So as long as you can read on a screen, you'll be covered. So let's jump right in here and kind of get started with where James is going. So James chapter 3, verses 1 through 5. He says, "Not many of you should become teachers." Oh, darn. Crap. I'm already up here. I should have read this beforehand. No, I'm just kidding. Not many of you should become teachers, my brothers, for you know that we who teach will be judged with greater strictness. It's an important note just already. If you're somebody who you're like, man, I want the spotlight, or I think I have this gifting and I want to get out, I want to talk to people, I want to show what I can do, or I want to share who I am, or I'm ready for the next level and that means I should be on a stage or on a platform, that's a great way to say, wait, let me check my heart. Because the call to lead, the call to teach, isn't a call to be on a platform. It's a call to be held to higher accountability. It's a call to strictness, right? So just be cautious of that. If you feel that in your heart, dig. I'm not even saying that's not a God-given thing. It could be a God-given push to say, hey, I want you to do things. But with a call to teach also means you need to check your heart deeply for pride, for anything in you that's trying to edify yourself. He goes on, he says, "For we all stumble in many ways, and if anyone does not stumble in what he says, he is a perfect man." So if anyone doesn't stumble in what he says, he's perfect. So obviously none of us are perfect, and all of us stumble. A perfect man, able also to bridle his whole body. If we put bits into the mouths of horses, that's like that thing that you use to steer a horse, the thing that they put in, so that they obey us, we guide their whole bodies as well. He says, "Look at the ships also. Though they are so large and are driven by strong winds, they are guided by a very small rudder, wherever the will of the pilot directs. So also the tongue is a small member, yet it boasts of great things." So So James is about to spend most of chapter 3 talking about the power of the tongue. But he starts by highlighting the importance of teachers and greater strictness for teachers, that they are held to this higher standard. And we might not see automatically where these things connect, but I think these things are incredibly tied together. And the fact of the matter is that the more influence that you have, the more influence you have over anyone in your life, whether it's a teacher or just anyone, whether it's a work environment, whatever it is, the more influence you have, the more important this teaching of words is for you. I can say another way that the more weight that your words have, the more cautious you have to be with them. Okay? So if you have a large amount of influence, the damage that your words can cause is that much greater. I was trying to think of an analogy, and I was thinking of like a tour guide. If you're like, in a mountainous area or hiking or like, going in a snowy terrain or something like that, something that's very dangerous terrain, and you're just a random hiker. Well, if you don't know where you're going or you lead yourself astray, ultimately you're only leading yourself astray, right? And that's dangerous for you, but only you. But if you're a tour guide and you lead yourself astray, not only are you leading yourself astray, you're leading everyone who's following you. And so the reason he starts off with this teaching about words, talking about teachers, is because what he's saying is if people are looking to you for guidance, then the words you say have that much more value. And that doesn't just apply to teachers. It also applies to big brothers and sisters. It also applies to bosses. It also applies to friend groups. It applies to every relationship that is in your life. And that's why sometimes people mistakenly attach this teaching only to teachers. They're like, well, he's really trying to just talk about how strict this is for teachers. But the fact is, this is a teaching for all of us because every single one of us have influence. Even if you think you don't have influence, you have influence. It's one of the big things a lot of us realize as we grow out of our teenage years. That's we're all angsty because we think we don't have any influence and our actions only affect us until maybe we end up in a friend group or we see someone else do something and we realize, oh wait, they are following me. I thought I didn't have any influence over them, but they're actually following the things that I'm doing. So the point about this is that leadership and speaking about these things, it's not about having a platform, it's about carrying responsibility. And we all carry a level of responsibilities. And again, one of those things that's true to us as leaders is that sometimes we will dismiss ourselves or dismiss our own mistakes in how we communicate. We'll say things like, oh, I just slipped up. Right? Or, maybe we let some foul language go, even us in our daily lives. We're like, oh, I just slipped up. Or, well, maybe we said something mean or talked behind someone's back in some way. And we said, oh, well, that's not really what I meant. I didn't mean to say it that way. You interpreted it that way, but that's not really what I meant. And what we don't realize in that is, well, it doesn't necessarily matter as much what you meant. Because what did you say? Your words are important. Words matter. We are not only responsible for what we mean to say, we are responsible for how our words are received. And this is something that is also countercultural, right? In culture, it's all about how I feel or how I meant this or this is my heart in the matter and all that. And we'll say things like, well, this is, you got to think about my heart. But the fact of the matter is, I don't know your heart. I know what you say. I know what your actions are. And we are, as Christians, responsible for how our words are received. So if you find yourself in a friend group, in a situation, and your friend, maybe they're living some sort of lifestyle, they're doing something that you know is not good for them, they're claiming to be a Christian, but they're doing something that is contradictory to the Christian lifestyle, I've met many people that'll take that as an opportunity to say, well, great, I'm going to tell them what they're doing wrong. I'm going to tell them right now. And they'll go up and they'll tell them, and they'll just you're messed up and you're doing this and whatever, right? But then the person, do they respond well to that? Of course not, right? The person rears back from that. Very rarely do people respond well to correction in general, but we take that as liberty to say, well, I'm just going to give it to them however I want to give it to them. And if they don't receive it, then that's on them. Well, kinda. But the Bible also says that we should let our speech always be graceful, seasoned with salt, that we should make our speech flavorful, and that we should communicate with grace and truth, right? That we should communicate any correction out of love and humility, not out of pridefulness or judgment, right? And so we might have a friend group that we're like, oh, I'm trying to correct someone, but I haven't actually thought at all about how I'm communicating. And so I am responsible for how this person responds to it, because I have an opportunity to shape how I'm communicating. I have an opportunity to think in depth about the way I'm communicating with someone. Sometimes that means stricter communication. Sometimes it means, okay, I'm trying to discern, I'm praying, I'm hearing from the Holy Spirit. What is the style of communication that is needed? So maybe I do need to be harsher in this environment, but I'm going to lean on God's guidance in that. Most of the time, that's not the case. Most of the time, it's how can I communicate this in a loving, Christ-like way? How can I communicate this in a way that this person might be able to hear it? We are responsible for how our words are received. People will say things like, well, my heart is in a good place. Like they took it this way, but that's not what my heart was. That's not where my heart is. And if you knew my heart, you would know that that's not what I meant, right? Or they'll say something like incredibly prideful, and you're like, hey, that seems really prideful. And they're like, well, that's not my heart. And we're like, well, but you really just said a really prideful thing. So how am I supposed to know where your heart is because you just said this incredibly prideful thing? Or you said something directly offensive and hurtful to me, and you're like, hey man, that's really hurtful. That wasn't my heart. I didn't mean to hurt you. That wasn't my heart. I did insult you in front of a large group of people, but that wasn't my heart. I swear. You're like, it wasn't my heart though. You got to know. You know my heart. If you know my heart, you would know. That's not what I was thinking. Well, it's like, I don't know your heart. You keep saying mean things. What do you mean? The fact of the matter is, we don't know each other's heart. The Bible says the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately sick, and that no man can understand it. It's Jeremiah 17:9. No man can understand the heart. The Bible is actually telling us we don't know our own heart. So if you hear someone say, well, you got to know my heart. No, I don't know your heart. You don't know your heart. The Bible says that we should be asking God to search the thoughts and intentions of our heart. The only person that knows our heart is God. That's the key thing, right? So I'm not going to rely on you telling me what your heart is. I can only rely on the information that you're giving me based on your words and your actions. And that's why we have to look at that, and we have to say, I can't rely on the excuse of, you know my heart, because if I say that, I'm lying to myself. If I say, you know my heart, I'm assuming I know my heart, and I don't. So I have to take a look at this and say, maybe I don't know my heart. Instead, I need to look at what are the things that are actually coming out of my mouth. Instead of writing it off like it's a slip-up, it's a Freudian slip, no, maybe that thing came out of my mouth. Maybe I said that way. Maybe I responded in anger, or I gossiped, or I responded in a way that was passive-aggressive or hurtful, because that is where my heart is. Because my response is not in opposition to my heart. My response is a reaction, a symptom to my heart. We have to ask ourselves, what do my words and my actions communicate about my heart? Because if you're witnessing to the world, if you're witnessing to your friends, if you're even just not even a witnessing environment, trying to have a relationship with others around you, they don't know your heart. This is all they have to go on, your words and your actions. And it is a tough step to take to say, what do my words and actions communicate about my heart? I had to go through this. I was actually talking with my man Asher. Usually I'm making fun of him, but I figured there's not the time to make fun of him, considering I'm talking about the power of words. So I was talking with my man Asher, who's amazing, and I love him so much. Yeah, let's give it up for Asher. I was talking to him about this season of my life where I had to look at my actions, and I had to look at like the way I communicated with people, And I realized I was a jerk. It was a really tough realization, but what happened is I made a joke. It was here in young adults, probably 8 or 9 years ago. And we were playing a game, and I was a leader. I was helping lead the game, and I made a joke at someone's expense. It was kind of a key character trait of mine. I still, if you know me, still kind of like a joke at people's expense, and I'm trying to work on it. So you can correct. I'm giving you guys all wait. If I say something that's offensive at a joke at your expense, you can be like, hey, man. Hey, except for Nick. You can't say that. Nick can't say that. Everybody else can say it. No, I'm just kidding. But I grew up in a construction environment. My dad was construction, so we were always chirping at each other. And that's just kind of how I lived life. And, I didn't think really anything of it. And I was in young adults, and I just kind of kept, throughout the night, there was one guy I chose. And he's actually not at young adults anymore, not because of this. I should just clarify that. He still comes to FCF. He's a friend. He's married and lives farther away. But he was, nice guy, but I kept just kind of chirping at him, making little jokes, little digs. And he came up to me afterwards and approached me and said, hey, I just wanted you to know, I really, the stuff he said, it hurts my feelings. I don't really like that kind of joking, and I don't like it, right? If you could not joke like that, I'd appreciate it. It kind of hurts. And in my head, I was like, this guy's lame. I was like, seriously, in my head, I felt the conviction, but I was like, what this means in my head, it means I just can't be around this guy, right? Because I'm me. That's not, my heart wasn't to hurt him. My heart wasn't to make a joke like this. That guy's too sensitive. And so I took a step to the side from that. I went home that night, and it just kept sticking with me. I kept feeling it rub right against my heart, right against the back of my head. And I was like, he's right. And I kind of had to wrestle with this feeling of wait a second. Every time I'm joking at people's expense. Every time I'm talking about someone, it's to harm or to hurt. And I thought about it, I was like, what do people know me as? Do people think of me, and do they think of me as someone who's building other people up or who's tearing other people down? Am I writing off that my attitude and my posture towards other people is just a sarcastic sense of humor? Or am I actually just hurting people and not taking responsibility for it? And it was in that moment, I remember that night I cried because I realized I was I'm not who I want to be. And I want to be someone who lifts people up, who encourages others. And I still have that tendency in me to joke that way. I still have that tendency in me to jab and to prod. And I have to constantly correct it because I realize, I look at myself and I go, what do my words and my actions communicate? And sometimes my actions, I'm all right, cool, I'm helping others and all that. But if I'm doing one thing in a good way, but then I'm using my words to tear others down, I'm fighting against myself. I'm realizing it's not the type of person I want to be. And so I'm not saying this as an accusation towards you. Hey, look at yourself. This is who you are. I'm saying I had to ask myself this question. And I realized that what my words and my actions communicated about my heart wasn't good. And it wasn't the type of person I wanted to be. And so this is a very real question that I think you should spend some personal time in prayer. I'm sure we'll talk about it in small groups as we go on, but we have to realize and ask, what are these things saying about us? The question that James is highlighting, he's going to go more in depth and more detail about this that we're about to jump into, but he's highlighting the power and the weight of the tongue and what it is that it shows us, what it shows us about ourselves and what it reveals about our heart, the dangers of it. So we're going to go on James chapter 3, verses 5 through 8. He's going to exemplify exactly how dangerous it is. He says, how great a forest is set ablaze by such a small fire, or some translations will say even just a small spark. And the tongue is a fire. He says, a world of unrighteousness. The tongue is set among our members, staining the whole body, setting on fire the entire course of life, and set on fire by hell. For every kind of beast and bird, of reptile and sea creature can be tamed and has been tamed by mankind, but no human being can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil, full of deadly poison. This is incredibly intense and spiritually driven language. Even the references to fire and what fire does, it's so key. It's important. Proverbs 18 will exemplify the same sort of thing. Proverbs 18, verse 21 says, there is one whose rash words are like a sword. Wait, is that wrong? Oh, no. Sorry, that's a different verse. Proverbs 18:21 says, death and life are in the power of the tongue. That we literally can give death or give life with our tongue. He talks about, did I jump forward? There we go. Okay, yeah, I did. All right. He talks about a fire. It's interesting to look at a fire because fire in the right place it can warm people. You put fire in a fireplace, it's great. It warms a whole house. It provides safety, and it can even be healing. It can let you cook food. It brings people together. Everybody likes snuggling up over a warm fire, come around a campfire. It's great, all that. But fire out of control, right? If Smokey the Bear says, hey, only you can prevent forest fires. He says, hey, don't start a fire. It's very dry out. It can cause absolute destruction. It destroys everything in its path. Even Nate Horch can't stop it. He's a firefighter, in case you don't know. I guess if it's small, he can still stop it. But if it's a forest fire, he can't prevent it. Smokey told us. Okay. I was just making sure you guys are still awake. All right. It got tense there for a minute. All right. The tongue is a fire. He literally is saying that the tongue, our own tongues, are a world of unrighteousness. That is maybe the most true statement I feel like I've heard in regards to like a young adult or even just like our world population, right? With our tongues, we spread gossip and slander. We hurt and we harm. It is a world of unrighteousness. He says it stains the whole body, setting on fire the entire course of life and set on fire by hell. What is interesting too, I have a study Bible that referenced this section at the end about beasts and animals, and how what James is doing is he's kind of purposefully offending his audience, because they would have taken this comparison to animals as extremely offensive. And he says, for every kind of beast, every bird, all of those things, they can be tamed, and you've even tamed them, but you can't even tame your own tongue. That would have been incredibly offensive to the audience, and that's why he says it. He says, you don't even have control over your own tongue, and you can't. That on your own, you cannot control your tongue. He goes on, James chapter 3, verse 9 through 12. He says, with it we bless our Lord and Father, and with it we curse people who are made in the likeness of God. From the same mouth come blessing and cursing. My brothers, these things ought not to be so. Does a spring pour forth from the same opening, both fresh and salt water? Can a fig tree, my brothers, bear olives, or a grapevine produce figs? Neither can a salt pond yield fresh water. He's sharing that there's a contradiction here. If your speech and your words don't exhibit the fruit that is supposed to be exhibiting through the rest of your life, what is this trying to say? We just finished in the last chapter talking about how faith without works is dead. And he's going to continue that same theory on with saying, how are you producing evil, vile speech from a life that is supposedly changed? He's emphasizing this point that we made earlier. How can you be one thing but produce another? How can you be filled with the fruit of the Spirit, grace, mercy, love, patience, gentleness, endurance, yet out of your mouth comes hostility, rage, anger, gossip, slander? How can you be a Christian but talk like the rest of the world? I experienced it too. I worked in construction, and I had the mouth of a construction worker. Not just cursing, not just like foul language. That's not all this means. Like sometimes we read this passage and we take it just to mean like, oh, I shouldn't cuss, I shouldn't say God's name in vain. And honestly, like I read it like that for many years. I don't think that's what James is talking about. Mainly, like that's included in what he's talking about, but that's not his point because that's like bottom of the barrel. Like they were not, like in Exodus when we read, like, do not take the Lord's name in vain. That's not talking about, like, using God's name as a cuss word. Because no one in the right mind in the Old Testament would have been using God's name as a cuss word. It's saying don't take up the image of a Christ follower. Don't bear the name saying, oh, look, this is who I'm following in vain, right? And so James isn't just talking about, hey, don't go around using foul language. That's a given. James is saying, for the same mouth, like, how are you going to allow types of communication that are tearing down, that are destroying, that are hurting others? It's the same sort of thing that I was doing. Jokes at someone else's expense, gossip, spreading, talking about someone behind their back, talking harshly about someone when you haven't even confronted them or cared for them, talking rudely. This is the type of communication that we have to steer away from. We have to realize that our mouth and the speech and what James is talking about in taming the tongue doesn't just have to do with cursing or foul language. It has to do with having self-control, the last fruit of the Spirit. It's saying, do things come out of your mouth that you go, ooh, I wish I shouldn't have said that? Or ooh, or do you even think that, right? Like, how many times have we, said something's blurted out that we're like, ooh, I didn't let that go through the mental barrier. I have no control over that. You're like, that's the problem, right? And then ultimately, these things that are coming out of your mouth, where are they coming from? Did they appear from nowhere, or did they start rooted in a heart problem, rooted in a feeling, a desire that is harsh, that is angry, that is hurtful? We need wisdom to guide our speech. And that's the next section he's going to talk about. I want to share a verse from Proverbs, though, leading into it. Proverbs 12, verse 18 tells us, there is one whose rash words are like a sword thrust, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. This is a great example to think about, that the rash words are like knives. They're like swords stabbing, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. I'm going to jump forward. Even though many of our Bibles, there might be, like if you're reading along, there might be another subtitle right here that breaks up the section of taming the tongue and wisdom from above. But I don't think that they should really be that separate, right? Don't take that as a thinking. Those subtitles are man-made, right? James wrote this all together, and I think it's because he is not done. He's saying, here is how you tame the tongue. Here's how you tame the tongue. It is with the wisdom, not of worldly wisdom, but of heavenly wisdom. He caps off this description, or this chapter, with a description of the wise that is fully intertwined with his teaching. He says, who is wise and understanding among you? Let them show it by their good life, by deeds done in the humility that comes from wisdom. But if you harbor bitter envy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not boast about it or deny the truth. Such wisdom does not come down from heaven, but is earthly, unspiritual, demonic. That's a harsh criticism. Don't boast that. He says literally that if you harbor bitter envy and selfish ambition in your hearts, he says it's demonic. He goes on, for where you have envy and selfish ambition, there you will find disorder and every evil practice. I want to pause there for a second. Maybe the most true thing of tonight that we're talking about, if you are harboring envy and selfish ambition, you will find disorder. Like nothing more true than the more evil, the more bitterness that we harbor, the more selfish and jealousy that we harbor in our lives, the more chaos that it causes in our life. He says, but the wisdom that comes from heaven is first of all pure, then peace-loving, considerate, submissive, full of mercy and good fruit of the Spirit, It's impartial and sincere. And then he ends, peacemakers who sow in peace reap a harvest of righteousness. See, many of us live in this world where everyone is out for themselves, everyone is selfish with their words, with their thoughts, with their heart, and they are communicating divisively, right? Whether it's politically, whether it's spiritually, whether it's just in like the way you're being raised up and the situations you're around, people are out for themselves, and the world is not breeding peacemakers. But what the Bible is telling us is that if you are supposed to be carrying the moniker of a Christian, if you are saying, I am a Christ follower, I am bearing the fruit of the Spirit, then that should and will influence your tongue. And it will influence how you handle these situations. It should change your thoughts from envy and selfish to being full of mercy and good fruit. It should change your motivation of your heart from selfish ambition and looking out for yourself to looking for peace. That we look at those who are even trying to cause division with us in the workplace, the person who's looking out for themselves, trying to step on your head to get up to the next rung. That in that we say, how can I look for peace? The personal relationship of the person who's offended you and hurt you time and time again doesn't mean we need to restore relationship to where it was, but we look at how can I look for peace? The Bible says, as much as it depends on you to live at peace with everyone you meet. So what is James telling us here overall in chapter 3? He tells us our words can steer our life like a rudder, that they can start a fire like a spark, or with a spark, and that they can bless God, but also wound the people made in his image. And James is honest with us. He says that no human being can tame the tongue on his own. That we have no ability to tame the tongue on our own. My goal in telling us this isn't just to say, hey, say nicer things. Hey, talk nicer. Hey, swear less. The goal is to bring our hearts before Jesus and ask him to change what it is that our words are revealing. Ask him not just to change our speech, but to change the heart that allows the speech to come forward. Because our words aren't random, they're fruit. They show us what's growing inside of us. If my words are constantly angry, maybe there's bitterness in my life that I need to surrender. If my words are always critical of others, maybe there's pride that I need to confess. If my words tear people down, maybe I've forgotten that these people are made in the image of God, that they are the people to which I'm supposed to be loving. And if my words are dividing to those around me, maybe I need God to make me whole so that I don't try to tear and divide those around me. But there is good news, and I'm going to end with this. The good news of the gospel and the good news of this same chapter is this. It's the God who exposes our hearts is the same God who can heal us. Yeah, you can say amen to that. The God who exposes our hearts is the same God who can heal us. James says that wisdom from above is pure, peaceable, gentle, open to reason, full of mercy and good fruits. This is the kind of wisdom that we need in our life. Not just smart words or religious words or Christ-like talk. We don't just need to be like talking like we're like writing a Bible book, right? We're not like just, I am much more sanctified and holy every day of the life that I live and I move closer to Christ, right? I'm working on Pastor Randy's really good with his Pharisee talk, his holier than thou. I'm working on my holier than thou impression. But it's not just like fill your life with a bunch of holy Christianese words. We want to have words that are shaped by a heart surrendered to God. One of my favorite passages in Acts, and I'll close with this, I'll pray out, is that when James and John are going out, they were known as the sons of thunder. They were kind of like a rough and tumble bunch. But in Acts, when they're going out and they're preaching to the masses, and it says that the groups of people, this is after Jesus has died, buried, and resurrected, And it said that they see James and John preaching in the marketplace, and it says that they saw them, and they could tell by their speech that they were uneducated, but they had been with Jesus. And that, I think, is a great example of what it's like to truly be with Jesus. We don't need to have a certain type of speech. You know, the Bible even tells us, hey, when you pray, don't pray like the Pharisees with all these big fancy words and letting so other people hear you. It's not about that. It's about being with me. And so James and John, let them be our example. You don't need to look a certain way or be a certain way. You just want a heart that is shaped by being in the presence of Jesus. I'll let that speak for itself. Let's pray.